to the podcast. Uh Hey Allison, how have you been?
Hi, Dan. I've been pretty good. Uh, it's fall starting up. It's a little stressful, but been enjoying the book.
Yeah, I am running through and making sure that we are live on all the channels. We're up on Twitch. How do I double check? Live. There we are. We are live on YouTube. And I just gotta send the link to people. So, is there for you? I'm going to throw you into the fire a little bit.
Okay.
Is there for you any I should just send people to Twitch anyway. Is there for you? No. What am I saying? Any connection to the stuff that's going on in the world to this book?
To this book. I think that, well, I for one am a big fan of fairy tales, and I have been for a long time. And then when I had kids, I was really excited to have kids, partly just because I could share fairy tales with them. So I think I was trying to think about what makes fairy tales so appealing. And I think it's this feeling of being connected to like a really long past and a deep culture. Like when you hear a fairy tale, you're really like, wow, you I don't know, you hear all the same little symbolic things over and over again, and you're thinking like, where did this come from? And you just kind of feel connected to people who lived in huts and woods and things. So I really like that a lot. And I think part of what makes that especially appealing these days is because I think, when you think about things like hospitality and etiquette, it's like for so long, I feel like we had a shared sense of those kinds of things. And now everything feels quite fragmented. So reading fairy tales for me is a good way to just get in there and feel some deep connection with like my possible ancestors and like just to think about what we need that we're missing today. I
I
want yeah I
I
don't know.
like fragmented
Yeah,
better than non-existent.
yeah, that's
There is
true.
no hospitality anymore. I was chagrined. I got turned down like 3 times today as I was walking. I was like, "Good morning," to just
Ah,
random people, and people were just like not having it.
did they have
It is
earbuds in?
uh one had earbuds, one was just walking to the bus stop, and the other one was very didn't have earbuds but was just 100% engrossed in the you know 6-inch window in
Hmm.
front of them.
Yeah, was that a man or a woman?
That guy was a man.
Okay, I like to keep a 6-inch window around me at all times,
Yeah, yeah.
as a
I'm
defense. But
very
But in certain contexts, like I mean, at work, I work at a university, and more over the years, students, they have earbuds in pretty much all the time, or not AirPods. That's what they have, and they will straight up run into you. I don't know if it's like that for you, Asher, on your campus, but they will just run right into you, and that's a problem. We can't run into each other. We've got to at least like give ourselves like some kind of you know like common courtesy.
I don't know. Like I read somewhere that in China, now I've never been, and that's probably kind of provincial, but in China they have pedestrian lanes that are for people who are not looking. So they can like plod along looking at their phones, and the rest of the people can walk in the fast lane.
That's amazing.
I
So
know.
you're also like sort of taking the risk that you're going to run into people. You're like, no one in this lane is looking, and I'm not looking. It might happen, but we've signed
Yeah.
up for it. But I like that because then you're opting in. You know, you've yeah, yeah. But I don't know. I think that's something I'm liking in this book. These people seem to have some like shared norms and shared, you know, history and like knowledge of monsters and I don't know. There's this law of surprise everyone seems to know about. But yet they have all these things in common, but they're also there's a lot about like subverting those, you know, like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what can we get away with, what can we um, work around, and I don't know.
I have one.
Yeah. Seems like, I mean, they're navigating like a world that's changing.
Yeah.
And so there's that whole conversation about your whole job is to like kill monsters, but now Geralt says like it's hard to do that now because there's so few of them that they are protected by royalty who like want to have their one dragon.
Yeah.
So you can't kill it. So I like that. The world was dynamic. I don't know what I expected because I don't really read fantasy. This is like the third, maybe fourth fantasy novel I've ever read.
Yeah, same with me. I don't read fantasy, and I was sort of dreading it. Partly because it was like, I don't know, the cover. I've got the guy with the dragon shooting flames, and I'm like, oh, I gotta do this for my book club. But after the first awkward opening sex scene, I was into it. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, I read it pretty fast. I enjoyed it.
Good. Okay. I am locked and loaded. Thank you, everybody, for coming and trying a fantasy book for me. I do really like this genre, and I really liked this book. Just as way of introduction, I we'll introduce ourselves real quick. I am Daniel Andrew Boyd. I run Story Luck, which produces the Detention Book Club. This is the last book of season 2. And Allison, how are you going to introduce yourself?
Let's see. I'm Allison. I live in Ithaca, New York. I have 3 kids and I'm pretty busy, but I'm making some time to read books with my old college friends. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm Asher. My role is to bring the nonfiction book so far to this book club. So this was kind of fun as a break from what I usually read. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Let me close some windows down. So I am gonna do. This is an interesting book because it comes. One of the cool things about fantasy is that it is into what Allison was saying sort of in the preamble, that like there's lore and there's all this like in-depth things and shared culture, which really comes out in these short stories from The Witcher, The Last Wish. I have read this whole series and I was interested because I was like, in like, how was it crafted? Because it was given to me when I looked it up and it was like, this is the first one. And then you read the rest. And slightly that's true. But this one, though, if you were coming to the series, you're supposed to read this one first. He wrote it last. But it's confusing because all the stories are it's a prequel of sorts. It's like before the main adventure of the normal, the main character's Geralt of Rivia. It's a sort of his adventures before he goes on the adventures. I'm gonna screw it. Sapkowski, who is the author, did an interesting thing in that almost all of these stories were written in the 80s before he wrote the main series. He found a literary magazine that focused on fantasy that was out of Poland, which they liked his work. He liked writing for them. So he wrote a bunch of these Witcher stories sort of as one-offs. That's what got him the book deal. That's what got him into writing the full novelization of this giant arc. Then he went back to these short stories, got with another publisher, and they did a gigantic rewrite that was like so in depth that they decided they weren't the same stories. As far as I know, the original stories, as they were produced in that magazine, didn't get written in English anywhere. You like can't find a translation of those. But those were very much just one-offs. And it's cool for me thinking about it in my own writing, because I love to write short stories. And when I read people who do interlocking short stories well, I'm always like, how? It seems like when you read it, it seems like, oh, if I was just smart, these would connect. But really, it like took him many, many redrafts over years to figure out what the connecting puzzle was. And in this book, what he does is he does an interlocking timeline situation. So there's sort of parallel stories where some of them you're unsure where they land in the timeline, but he starts in a temple, Melitola's temple, I think is her name, Melitola, and she is a goddess of healing and kindness. And there he gets sort of tutelage from the main woman, as well as being healed. That section connects all these short stories. So he has a moment where he's hanging out with the priestesses there, short story, where whether it's him reminiscing or just a flashback, it's back in time. And that becomes a connector where you keep moving linearly while he's recovering at the temple, and keep having these memories, some of which are why he's injured in the first place and has to be at the temple.
So he wrote the stories first, but then didn't really publish them, and then wrote the whole series, and then he went back to those stories and completely rewrote them. And I'm guessing he must have then made like new connections that kind of explain some things that happen in the whole series. And
yes, so reading this is the only book that I've read multiple times. I've read the whole series, but this book, I really liked these short stories. And a big part of it was I was just like, these short stories are so much better. So it gives a little sense of like denouement when you read them in the book, because it's like he becomes a better writer. And I think he's a little bit better at the short story from my perspective than it's just like novels are hard. Epic fantasy seems really difficult. How can you have a result that ties everything together? But there was a feeling of like, oh, this is like really, really well crafted and great. And then all of a sudden oh, now it's just a normal high fantasy story in the full epic novelization of his life. It's not as many crazy tricks that are sort of happening in this.
Not as many crazy tricks in the novels as are happening in the short stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's also got hindsight now. Who this character is.
Yes, and who the world is.
Do these characters all persist?
Yeah, basically you see all of them and they are they're good. They're good, and like this becomes there's a lot of moments there. So throughout this discussion, we're gonna have spoilers for everything, but there's a character Stragobor that we're gonna talk about where you're like a little uneasy about how evil or not evil he is, and by the end of the novels, you're like, oh, he's really like as evil gets.
That's the wizard, right?
That's the wizard. So let me bring up the sort of list.
I just want to say, like, for people who haven't read the book, and for me, I thought the structure was really crazy. Like, I'd never read. It presents itself as a novel. I didn't realize these are kind of like short stories, but they're very episodic. So for me, I was like, did the show come out before this was written? I thought it just seemed like it was written for TV because you don't need the connection from one story to the next, but they do interleave. And there is a kind of moral progression sort of with the main character throughout. So it was really different for me, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I loved it. It just giving me like ideas of sort of, yeah, how could you like, what would Monster of the Week look like in terms of like memoir writing? Like what? This week's challenge. This is the new goofy person I met, and it's sort of, yeah, it's very television show. No, so how I ran into it is how most of America ran into it. I played the video games. I came into the video games at the third one, which was the most popular. But as soon as you like boot it up, it's like the cool thing about the video games was they were all connected. So your choices had deep impact in the later games as to like who survived, what the storyline was going to be, all of these little things. Really, they spent 5 to 10 years making these games so that the branching of choice making was deeply impactful from one to the next. And so I had to start over and just be like, oh, I have to play the first one. And at this point that the third one came out, the first one was 20, 30 years old. So it was like, oh, it looks horrible. It plays crazy. It's like an old sort of early 2000, late 90s video game. And playing through that, I was just like, this is so good. I have to read these novels. After the novels came out, after the novels and the video game took off in Polish, they created a series which is not well regarded, but had a bunch of seasons. And people like it in sort of a Xena warrior princess style. Like everything apparently is like totally different. And the Netflix was supposed to be real canon just like, that's how they sort of pitched it. This is going to be just like the books. This is the redo. We're going to like do it justice. And people feel that they didn't pull it off, including the show's main character, the guy who played Geralt. And so he left the show. And the rumor is because he was just like, you guys aren't following the story. That's why I signed up for this, so I'm leaving.
So did they just? So they didn't finish it. They just did.
Well, they're gonna have, the next one is coming out October, season 4, which I'm not sure. They're trying to have 5 seasons. Netflix famous for canceling things before the end.
Yeah.
But they swapped out Henry Cavill for Liam Hemsworth. And so he is the new one. And it's going to be a what is a famous show that swapped it out?
Bewitched.
Yeah. Was that guy's name Darren?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was Dick Van Dyke, and
it was somebody who looked like him, but it wasn't.
And somebody who looked like Dick Van Dyke.
And the two Beckys and Roseanne. We really don't.
Yeah, the two Becky. Didn't they switch the Becky back? So it went like one.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that because they switched back. I think I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's funny. I mean, I only watched the first episode of the Netflix series, and I was already like, they're condensing way too much.
Yeah.
Here, without doing enough. The things that I wanted to see weren't in the show at all in that one episode.
Yeah.
And it was humorless. We had talked about this earlier, that it was just, it's not funny. There's no lightness. I just think like the book has that kind of Canterbury Tales quality where they're like, you can kind of imagine that this is a world where there is poop or something. I don't think there's like poop jokes, but like they definitely are close to the ground in that way. But in the Netflix, it's like everyone's very serious, and it's more like a sword and sandal in terms of the tone, kind of up here. So
yeah,
I didn't like that as much.
Yeah, so let's talk about that opening. They start us off sort of with a preamble, and then the first story they hit you with like, this is what this is about. And then kind of there's a shift into the humor and slapstick of it. Asher, when we were discussing it a week ago, you had something interesting about sort of like the difference between sexy, vulgar, and explicit. Is sort of how I remembered it. Would you go into that?
Sure. So it doesn't show up in the first chapter, but we were talking a lot about the bubble bath. So
sure, but I think in that first chapter they open with a sex scene.
Oh yeah,
right.
Like I that's what. And I'm like, where is that supposed to come from? That is a flash forward to this relationship with Yennefer, right?
I thought it was one of those priestesses at the.
That's one of the priestesses. So it opens with him sort of having a tryst with a possibly mute priestess,
right,
in the temple. And he sort of does wink and nod, old man style dad jokes whenever he writes a sex scene. So, one of the lines is, she tried to get his attention, and then it's like, he was at attention. And it's like, okay, great buddy. And so, yeah, so like one of the things you asked me was like, why is this the start? And I've been thinking about it. I don't know that I have a good answer for this part as I do for like the next thing to talk about the violence. But with the sex scene throughout the whole novelization, he has a relationship to women and sex that is bizarre to me. Maybe it is some sort of reference to Conan the Barbarian style. You know, my life is to bone beautiful women and drink mead and crush the skulls of my enemies. Geralt feels like that at times. He has what we're supposed to believe is a sort of deep forever love with a woman that he meets in one of the short stories, Yennefer. But throughout the series, they have trysts all the time and have very uncomfortable feelings and conversations about it. And so this sets that up where you kind of think at this point, like, oh, he's just a dude having, you know, hot girl in every port kind of thing. It sets that up. And then later in the story, you meet Yennefer, which has a different feel to it. And then in the novelizations, she keeps coming back and he keeps seeking her out. I can't figure out what his viewpoint is on open relationships, but a uncomfortable open relationship is what he has with Yennefer, where things aren't well defined as to what they're allowed to do and whether every time they're apart, are they broken up or are they getting back together? It's unclear.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes like an interesting thing in how he handles moral ambiguity in general. Is I think he works hard to remove point of view and show just like there are things that are messy in life. And I think that seems to be important to him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's why he kind of seems like a bonehead a little bit, because we don't really get a sense of his thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get a sense of the character's thinking. It's more just like outside what they're doing and what they say.
Yeah.
Maybe their facial expression, like they're described, but we don't get their thoughts.
Yeah, like deep inner thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty close following Geralt most of the time, but you're never really inside his head.
Mm-hmm.
You see him.
He's very verbal. He likes to talk to the people around him, but I think one of the things that you and I liked, Allison, was that it felt like there's also like moments where you're like, this is kind of like a noir. Like he's a detective.
Yeah,
in his conversations, he pulls people out.
Yeah, and he's very. I mean, you get a sense of him just sitting there, like being very skeptical. Like people say things, and he doesn't say a lot in response because he seems to be withholding judgment and just wants them to keep talking. But yeah, I guess then if you think of it more in terms of like his relationships with other people, then it gets, like Asher's saying, harder to know where he's coming from, and is he smart about relationships, and is he, I don't know.
But the noir analogy is perfect because the hard-boiled detective is hard boiled. You don't get inside his head, and then the woman that he gets involved with is like, is she an enemy? Is she your lover? You can't tell what she is about either. So it's just like constant ambiguity and like violence.
Yeah.
Danger.
Which is especially funny having him like partnered with Dandelion, who's just like blah blah blah. Like, that's a funny pair.
Yeah. I wonder if we searched. That's a genre that I don't think I've ever read anything in. So maybe the next one we do.
Oh
we
yeah.
pick a we pick a. Have either of you read Maltese Falcon?
I never have.
No, but I think I have read by that author.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a friend who that's her favorite author. Help me, Daniel Hammett.
Sounds like Dashiell.
Dashiell. It's Dashiell. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Do you? Yeah. So a lot of these short stories are just setting up who is this character? Why is he the way he is? The first short story opens with Geralt brutally killing some dudes at a bar. Seemingly for a slight offense. This is another moment where you're kind of like, why is this part of the story? It doesn't play with the adventure or the mystery that's coming. It acts almost like a Seinfeld, or it's not funny, but it acts like a sort of SNL cold open. He walks into a bar. This guy's like, fuck you. You're from out of town. And goes to grab his sword. He pulls out his sword and he just is like, yeah, no one
can touch his sword. Yeah.
You can touch his sword.
I think that's what it establishes.
Yeah.
Like, the sword is a big deal.
These are the consequences.
Yeah. And that permeates throughout the short stories. He's very worried about where his sword is, where it's going to go. He doesn't want to be away from it, that sort of thing. But after this, he gets taken to the town sort of alderman to be met with justice. And he sort of casually, sort of officially says, well, I'm in town to save this princess that the king wants saved. And then the guy is just like, well, we're going to forget about all the murdering you've done, and I will take you to the king. And you never really go back to that or have it resolved. From my personal point of view, I think it is actually a very important scene for how I interpret what's happening to Geralt's internal monologue throughout this. It's like he goes on this emotional arc that starts there, where he is a cold-blooded killer who doesn't really care about life and morals and is sort of this neutral, like, if you get in my way, I will cut your head off, and has this series of adventures where he starts to think, oh, other people are fully formed beings with souls that I have to kind of contend with, and my actions have meaningful consequences outside of myself, and I don't want to be this murderous person anymore. As it goes on, he starts taking more and more care to not just kill people. And so I think for me reading it, that's one of the things that I liked, was sort of mustering out what I thought about it, because it's not explicit, of like what changed, what can I like look at action wise is he doing that's different. Yeah. Does anybody have thoughts on that?
I think the beast going to the beast's castle was important too, because the beast is a monster, but he's like, I'm actually a dude, and I'm in love with people, and like I have a girlfriend, and she's kind of a monster. She's kind of an actual monster. I mean, he just kind of, that's a really weird nuanced case, because that guy was turned into a beast for being a jerk. And so he's like looking through all the various presentations of this thing, this being, and seeing like multiple things, and also having to piece together what his life is like in this castle where he's sort of cut off from everybody. And then later on, he's not really interested in killing the Renfrey, the Snow White character, for hire, even though I think maybe in the before time, he would have been less scrupulous about that. Does that track? There are some things that
Yeah.
we would say yes to that he says no to later on.
Yeah, that's how I feel about the arc.
It's hard to
When
establish
I
that
was
there's
reading
an
it.
arc again without internal dialogue, but it's still possible. And I always think about, like, with epic, sometimes we're encouraged to think like characters are stiff. They don't really change. Like in ancient literature, character does not change.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what character means. It's like the face of a coin that is pressed there and it stays like that. But even Odysseus has change in character, because at the beginning of the Odyssey, he gets himself in all this trouble by not being able to restrain himself. By the end, when he's hanging out at his house and he has to pretend to be a beggar amid all these suitors who are like eating his food and trying to fuck his wife, he has to be cool for like a night, and he can. Whereas he could not have done that before. But there's no thought process. It's just there's like one line that's like, Odysseus turned back and forth in the night, but would not betray himself. And so there are ways that it just brought that up for me. Like in epic, even with kind of stiff characters that have a type to them, they can show psychological or moral progression. And so you don't need interior thought for that to be signaled, but it's still harder to point to where it happens.
Yeah. I want to give this is the one that I understood like the best, and so I'm going to the Beauty and the Beast one. I'll give a little overview. I believe that one was called The Grain of Truth. Is that true? Yeah, The Grain of Truth. And so Geralt opens the story as a detective. He runs into a cart that has been attacked, maybe by brigands, maybe by something else. He sees some clues. The people who were there dead. He follows the tracks back to the beginning, where it came from. It came from this house. It seems abandoned. When he comes into it, a very clear allusion to Beast from Beauty and the Beast comes out, tries to shoo him away, then cordially invites him in. And as they have this discussion, Geralt clues in that there's someone else who lives in the house. Asher brought up that this guy, he considers himself a monster. He says he's a monster. And there's sort of levels of monster to him. There's one, his appearance. He is like a beast. He kind of has a lion's head and is giant and furry, immortal, super strong, super fast, has magic abilities, is kind of grotesque. But when he was younger, as a boy, he was part of a thieves guild, and they went and attacked a temple of this evil spider that had all these priestesses, and one of the guys convinced him that even though he's a young boy, it's time for you to become a man, and you do that by through sexual assault. And so he goes to attack this priestess. While they're having the act, she curses him, and then she kills herself. And this curse is what turns him into this beast. Eventually, everybody runs away from him. It causes him to have this sort of relationship, this lonely relationship where he lives in this house by himself. The other thieves end up running away. He ends up having a number of wives because he has this castle, sort of cottage castle full of money. Merchants will come by, offer him their daughters to wed. And he a little bit thinks, maybe if I have a good relationship with a woman, I'll stop being a beast, but that does not happen for him. And eventually the women always leave him. Geralt hears this story. On his way out, he knows there's something else. And that something else is that a vampire who is a beastly sort of vampire. There's a lot of vampires in the lore of this. This is one, I forget what they call it.
A bruxa or something.
A bruxa. Yeah, it's a bruxa. So it's sort of the second highest level of vampire in the thing, and it really is a giant bat that can turn into a woman, and it just devours people. And the bruxa, Geralt surmises, thinks that it can take over this beast and have this immortal beast be its protector. So he thinks that the relationship is toxic. And he goes and he starts to fight this bruxa. The bruxa is about to kill him. And the beast kills the bruxa to save Geralt's life. In her dying throes, she tells him that she loves him. She tries to free herself from this impaled spear that has happened, and Geralt finishes her off by removing her head with his magic sword. When she passes away, having true love for him, the beast becomes a man again. And that is sort of the end of the story. They part ways.
And he feels, there's that scene when the Witcher is chopping off her head, and he, in that moment, he really questions. He says, there are fewer and fewer monsters, and what am I? And he says something, he kind of seems like disoriented, and he says, how quiet, how empty, what emptiness within me. So it seems like he might have like sort of connected with this bruxa a little bit, or at least sympathized for, the love that they had. And it's like, I just ended that, and what does that make me?
Yeah, the beast says that line, right?
Yeah, or no, he does.
Or Geralt does.
Yeah, the Witcher does.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I like that. I think I'm glad you pulled out that specific line. There are fewer monsters. What emptiness is inside me? That's like, it's stuff like that leads me to think that down this path, and this is why Asher brought it up, is like, this is an important one, where he's questioning this murder. Like, if this Brooks is clearly a monster, you know, he is this trained assassin. His whole life is to go out and kill monsters, and he just killed someone who loved a person so much it ended a curse that seemed like it was going to be eternal. And these sorts of experiences keep happening, and he becomes, I think, more and more cautious with what he's doing. I really like, throughout the novelization and these short stories, how many ways you can hit that theme of who is a monster and what does it mean to be a monster, and how much I enjoy that conceit. Like, oh, like every time back to the episodic TV type thing, it's like, okay, this is the monster. It's a beast. Oh, it's a vampire. Oh, it's a devil. Oh, it's you know, a djinn or a genie. And each time you run into these characters where you're like, oh, the monster is greed. The monster is capitalism. The monster is systemic violence. The monster is the government. The monster is all these other things. But society ends up focusing on the thing that's visual. Like, it's so much harder to wrap your head around the monster within us and the monster that we are like building through the systems that we build. But these stories, I think, do a good job of being like, just showing that, like, oh, we in life say things like, ah, what a monster. Oh, that was savage. Oh, you know, whatever. And it's like, if you think more deeply about it, there's a lot of nuance, and maybe we all have a little monster and we like can fight it in different ways than like going after the problem, but like, how do we stop the creation of the problem?
And also, we were saying it has to do with our lack of information. So Geralt is always like finding himself being asked to do stuff, or being asked to do things, but then he doesn't have all the information. Like, what is the wizard's actual relationship to this Snow White figure, and what is she about? He doesn't really know. And then she's dead. He's killed her, and the wizard standing over her body saying, "Oh, it's time to cut her up and see what she died of." You know, it's like totally ghoulish. And he's like, "Wait, what did I do? Who are you?" Like, he doesn't know the context, the full context.
And he himself is somewhat monstrous. Like, he can see in the dark. His eyes glow. He bites sometimes. You have that image of him like sleeping in the coffin, I think, that you guys brought up in the story with the Striga. So it's like, does it take being a little monstrous yourself to kill other monsters or save other monsters and kind of like walk back and forth between them, or to suss out something that's not monstrous in them, something worth saving?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of that. Like, in your quote, it's like, one of the things these stories make me think about is just that idea of self-reflection and being like, okay, if I see a monster in the world, how can I like use that to shine a mirror on myself and be like, okay, what would I do in this situation? What is making me think that this is a monster? Can I think about it in a different way? Like, before judging other people, how do you go, like, whenever you notice that impulse to be like, oh, I'm going to judge you for the thing that you did that I think is monstrous, like to take a step and a sort of moment to be like, okay, can I put myself in that person's shoes, or can I think of things that I've done that are similar? And that sort of, that's why I like these short stories.
Yeah, and I don't, and like, how does the monstrous relate to like nature or, you know, curses? There's various curses in this book.
Yeah.
I mean,
And they
yeah,
and they sort of, there's a bunch that come out specifically, but there's a couple where it's just like people say things in the heat of the moment,
mm-hmm.
and it curses people. And the opposite happens in that story. A curse is lifted by just a spontaneous moment of this seemingly monster vampire being like, oh, I loved you, I truly loved you. And I do you, this is sort of a hard on the spot question, but do you have any moments like that for yourself where you think you might have cursed someone or someone cursed you? By like some dumb thing they said?
Huh.
It's eerie whenever something like that happens. Like, I ride my bike around, and the worst time to ride is when school's getting out, because all the little 14-year-olds come out and practice being edgelords in public. And so
Yeah.
I ride around and they'll be like, fuck you, you know, they really
just
are
random.
horrible. Yeah, or they'll be like, I hope you die. And I'm just like, damn it, why? Do you really hope I die? I don't hope I die, but that'd be really freaking ironic if I did right now. So it's just like that, having the weight of meaning, or like, you know, added value, literarily speaking. If I were to die right now, I don't like that. It's like pressure, you know. That is a curse.
Their words are so meaningless, though, because they really are just saying them to
impress their friends.
So they don't have any curse magic in them.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah.
But it's eerie.
Yeah, and I think that there is like a little bit of this idea, like, I am into that concept in hopefully like a non-froofy way, but I do think you have to be sort of vigilant about whenever someone tries to like name you and tell you who you are or what you are.
Yes.
To be like, you know, those things, you have to like kind of like put up wards to be like, those things, those labels that other people give me aren't like, I don't have to take those on. I don't have to believe that. And I think that I see that out in the world, that like people get stuck on stuff, like somebody said something. Back in 2022, I did this thing where I helped 1,000 people tell better stories about their lives as sort of a challenge to myself. And one of the stories that came up time and time again was moments where people were children and they were told by a teacher that they were bad at art.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, I gave up art. And I just like, and they're like, you know, it's 20, 30 years later. I'm 60 years old. I'm 40 years old. And I think about being a second grader, showing my teacher, you know, what I thought was this awesome photo, or playing this thing on the piano, and the teacher being like, that sucks. Some people aren't supposed to be artists.
I know.
and they're like, I was ruined, and I was like, oh, this isn't for me. And part of the work that we did was like, how can we retell another story around that, or like work through that, like, you know, to come away with a different meaning. Like, what are times we can contrast with where it's like people loved your art, and that's cathartic. But it does make me think, like, I am into this idea of like, I think that these short stories highlight something that curses feel very real, that we often let them be real when people curse us.
But they're also, as you were saying, like random and ridiculous, and they have these like very real consequences.
Yeah.
Like now there's this thing in the tall grass that's killing everything, you know, because of like some curse or whatever.
Yeah.
Now there's something in the tall grass that's killing everything. I like that. People, I feel like especially when you think about people online just spewing trash talk, like, you gotta stop doing that and like save it up and make it potent for when you actually really want to curse someone. I just feel like it's such trash, and it's just raining down on us all the time. And I do wish people would be more thoughtful and guarded, and like actually select the things they're saying, and stop being so like hyperbolic, I guess, you know, like stop telling everyone to die, stop telling everyone to fuck off, and you know, you can't just say stuff like that. You can't just be like die, and you can't just like randomly call everyone a fascist or a whatever. I don't know, like
right, whatever it is,
or libtard or whatever the new thing is these days. I don't know.
Yeah. I have a short story from my family. My brother Christopher was in 2nd grade. This is before I was born, so this is just like legend passed down to me. But he gets called in to a parent-teachers meeting, and my dad is the only one who can take him. So he goes into the classroom, but right before they go in, Christopher looks up at my dad and he says, "Don't worry, she's weak. I got this." And my dad is just like, "Weak? What are you talking about?" And so they go in, and they get sat in, you know, little 2nd grader chairs, and she's at her desk towering above them. My dad doesn't fit in the desk, and they're sitting there, and she starts to say, you know, he's a smart kid, he's got all these good qualities, but he just doesn't pay attention in class. And you know, my brother just lights into her, and he is like, "I don't pay attention. You don't pay attention. They don't pay you enough to pay attention because you don't want to focus. You know, you think you can call me in here because you can save me because I could get good grades, but there are kids who need your attention, who need you to focus on them, and you are never there for them." And he starts naming these kids who have like disabilities, and how she's a scumbag teacher because she doesn't give them any attention, and she only wants to teach to the smart kids, and he doesn't like it, and he thinks she's a, you know, whatever. And she breaks down in tears. And my dad is like, "Listen, I hear you. We're going to resolve this." And he picks up my brother and they walk out. And as soon as they get out of the building, my brother goes, "I told you I'd break her."
That's sick.
My God.
It's like,
but there was like, I imagine, some truth to what he was saying. He wasn't just like totally
sure, but
right?
Yeah. And I do see it as like, it was like a family trait. My mother was very good at this, of like scanning a room and seeing people's weaknesses.
Wow.
And just like lashing out. And I've trained it out of me, but I did it all the time growing up. And it
Wow.
wouldn't be, it's not attacks like, oh, whatever, you die, you're lame. It's like really a sixth sense about certain people's insecurities
Mhm.
and what
Mhm.
they're worried about, and just like knowing that if you're prickled, you can get them. And you can curse people like that. They
Yeah, that,
really will mess them up.
damn. Wow.
That is magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a little bit like self-aggrandizing, but it's part of why like book clubs are awesome, and so why reading is awesome. Language as magic, the ability to label things, sort of that biblical sense, like I'm gonna call it an apple, I'm gonna say that it's good, I'm gonna call it a snake and say that it's evil, and it's like all of a sudden those things are those things and we react to them completely differently. So having a book like The Witcher, The Last Witch, where you get confronted with these moments where you have to reflect on like, oh, it was labeled evil, but is it? I
Mhm.
think is a good continual reminder. And one of the reasons that I like those stories so much is like, I have to be reminded of it. Like,
Mhm.
oh, maybe these things are more nuanced than I give credit. Maybe I'm more culpable of doing the stuff that I'm mad about than I give myself time to reflect about.
Yeah, it's a great read.
Yeah.
Two things that I wanted to hit on in this discussion that we kind of just a little bit touched on. The first one, Allison, is I'm interested in hearing about how fairy tales enter, like, I'm interested in hearing more about that concept of fairy tales in your life, and like with kids,
Mhm.
especially since your kids are so imaginative. Like, do you see them creating fictional worlds? Do they like what is their relationship to fairy tales
Yeah.
and
I mean,
your relationship to like passing those on? If
yeah.
you'd go a little more into that.
I mean, we've always read fairy tales. They're older now, but
Do you read like the Grimm's ones, or
yeah.
like are
So
they?
I decided from when they were quite young that I would read them all the fairy tales. Um, and it's interesting because like we didn't watch like anything inappropriate on TV for like a long time, but
Yeah,
for some reason I was totally fine being like, and then like then she cut off his head and served it to her husband. Like I don't know, like we could like read all that stuff and it felt safe because it was just like, even though really I mean like these fairy tales were not written for children, but somehow I'm like, this is like the collective, and it like fairy tales are so like all this stuff could happen in these fairy tales, and it's just sort of becomes absurd, and then at the end somehow everyone's back to life and fine, and I don't know, it's sort of this world where you can like scramble everything up and mix and match and go crazy, and it's I don't know. It's also like I think a good way to help them understand that there are like dangerous people and there are dangers out there, and to have a sort of sense for them, I guess. But anyway, yeah, they're all really creative in different ways. My youngest is the one who really ended up liking. He likes reading myths and folk tales, and
yeah.
he remembers them all, and he'll I don't know. So there's that. The other ones, they I don't know. They all write stories. They like to play games where they start a story and write like a paragraph of it, and then we pass it on, and we do that together a lot. So um,
And you fold the paper.
we do. Well,
Yeah,
although
yeah, yeah.
we,
I love that game.
yeah, they read the whole part that comes before it, and then they write their own. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of rambling, but I don't know. I myself really I'm a sucker for any kind of fractured fairy tale or retold, reimagined fairy tale. I never get bored of them. I don't know.
When I was re-going through it for today's talk, I missed that Sleeping Beauty. There was like a sort of the wizard in the Sleeping Beauty one is called Stragobor, and he lives in this tower, and the the Sleeping Beauty character is trying to murder him because he was the one who was like, this is an evil princess and we need to kill the evil princesses. But they had a fight, and I don't know how I missed this, but he has a line in there. He's like, yeah, I ran into her and I cursed her and I turned her into crystal. And then I buried her in a gnome's cave and I collapsed the cave on her. And then what happened was a prince was like, a whole person of crystal? I'm going to have to dig her out. And so he digs her out, spends all his king father's money. He gets in trouble. They uncurse her. Then the guy is like, oh, you knew while you were down there, you knew the gnomes, and before that you were friends with them, so you know where all their gold is. And they torture her to go get the gnomes before she gets away. And I was like, oh, like I just like completely missed that there was that part. Like she gets saved by a prince,
Yeah.
but like the prince is just like really terrible and wants to like basically either use her to get the gnome's gold or just like chip her apart to get her crystals. Be like, oh, she's a princess of diamonds.
It's messed up.
It is messed up.
I read a thought piece today where a woman wrote, she's like, I was hanging out with this guy friend of mine and he was lamenting that he doesn't have a girlfriend, and I was like, I got the perfect girl for you. And she's like, she likes your politics, you guys have the same hobbies, she's the right age, you know, she's single, she's my friend, so she's super awesome. And then the guy is like, yeah, as long as she's not fat or ugly. and then she's like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, well, you know, I don't want to date anybody who's fat or ugly. And she's like, okay. And then he's like, you know, and she's like, what about this other stuff that we just discussed being awesome? And he's like, yeah, but if she's hot, like I don't care about any of the other stuff. And then he turns it on her and is like, listen, this is your problem. You want too much out of relationships. And if two people find each other attractive, that's all there needs to be. And you don't have any other connection. And you can like do each other and like cohabitate. And that's it. And it's like this, that's how I think about like a lot of characters in this, that they don't see each other as human, as like fully realized intellectual beings with thoughts and feelings. Like there's a lot of men in these short stories who say gross things as though it's normal. Like, oh, the world's just like this. Of course we have to kill all the princesses. Yeah, there were a couple that I screwed up and they weren't evil.
But it was worth it.
But it was worth it. And like that sort of thing. Of course, we'll dig her up.
We'll dole her out in crystal shards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then the second topic sort of connecting this of like men sometimes being a little brutish and strange, and like this idea of love at first sight is the bubble bath scene. So like in this titular story, The Last Wish, Geralt is trying to save his friend Dandelion, who is this hilarious huckster, jester, vaudevillian, ragamuffin, quasi prince sort of character who goes around and makes money by writing songs about how cool Geralt is. And to do this, he finds a sorceress. The sorceress has enchanted this this merchant's house, turned it into a pseudo, I don't know if it's a brothel, but like some sort of like place for being hedonistic. And he goes in there, tries to convince her to help Dandelion. She finds out that Dandelion has been cursed by a genie. She thinks she can take over the genie, and to do that she needs to get washed up first. And so that's how we meet her sort of deciding that she needs a bubble bath in front of Geralt. Yeah, and Asher, what did you think about?
Okay, so again, like in your title, this is supposed to be sexy because the logic is like you see somebody naked, you fall in love with them, which I totally understood as a kid. Like I drew there's comics about this. It was like my early sexual expression, I suppose. But it's totally not hot here. So she's like, come into my bathroom while I take a bath. It'll just be faster. But then she makes herself invisible. Oh no.
Yeah, I did that.
Oh, okay. Makes herself invisible so that you're basically seeing the contours of her body through the soap suds. And it's the narration is kind of vulgar in the way that it's like, ooh, and it was so hot. So here's a line. Like, she gets out of the tub and she's getting dressed, and so it just looks like clothes floating around. A white shirt with an enormous flower-shaped ruffle fluttered upward and outlined Yennefer's body. She didn't, the Witcher noticed, bother with the whalebone nonsense usually worn by women. She didn't have to. So it's just like she had a teeny tiny waist and a big ass, and it was really hot. And it's just that kind of like, I'm not going to describe it outright, but I'm going to give you a picture in your mind that is through this kind of very dad sexuality kind of narration. I mean, it's a narrator structure that's like kind of overbearing at times, but at the same time, she's a good character. Like, we agreed that she was pretty cool.
Yeah, all the women are kind of cool. Men are very lusty, and they are written in this way that it's like there are moments where you're like, her boobs boobily boobled. And you're just like, wait, this is what's going on. And I'm gonna try to highlight myself to give you a sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
And you can see this photo of this guy, and you're kind of like, yeah, this is what he thinks about romance.
Actually, I like him a little bit better knowing he's a fat dad.
Yeah.
But all the characters have these stupid double entendres and innuendos, and it's just so cheesy and lame and not hot.
I think overbearing is a good word to describe it, because it is like intrusive, like, because a lot of the writing is like pretty intelligent and the ideas are smart, and then when you just like slap this stuff in there, it's like, is he just pandering, or is he like who?
Yeah, is it fan service? Is it?
or
being beholden to it.
is it supposed
Does
to
he
be
think
funny?
funny, or does he
Yeah.
think it's sexy? I
Mhm.
I think that my guess is that he thinks it's sexy.
I
I
think
think
when
that
they finally hook up, it is kind of sexy because the kind of like Playboy-esque rhetoric isn't there, and there's more of a sense that they're coming together because they do like each other.
yes, but
Mhm.
then immediately he has the two other characters, Dandelion and the friend that they made, be peeping toms
Right.
and be like, "What's happening in there?"
hmm
Oh, I guess we should let them
Right.
have a minute to themselves.
That was gross, yeah.
And it's just like
They describe it without describing it. They say even more about it, which is also vulgar. I can't find that part.
Yeah,
but then we learn like what is hot for Geralt is that he understands somehow from her eyes that she's really a hunchback and that she's made herself hot, and he likes that. So I don't know, maybe that's what he finds hot about her. He realizes.
You can see the
And I
hunchback.
wonder, yeah, if that's about the monstrous, like where is the monstrous? And maybe it's that relation to the monstrous that he finds hot.
like they both that he can relate to, because
Mhm.
he's kind of a mutant. He's kind of sees himself as that monster who kills
Mhm.
monsters. Like, people think I'm a monster and I kill these things, and like, how am I better than them? I don't feel like I am, kind of stuff that he's going through. And both of them are super powerful characters who struggle with that.
Mhm.
Awesome. I think that this was a good conversation. Thank you guys for being here, and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
What is happening next? I will throw out some plugs. Storyluck is doing a bunch of stuff. We will make announcements through the email blast about what we are doing for the next Detention book clubs cycle. This one, because of scheduling, took a little bit longer than we expected. So I don't know what we should do for the next season. Should we do one more book this year and just do like a one-off? Do we want to have the cycle being 3? I like the 3s. We can kind of discuss that offline, but that's something to think about. But we do a thing called Journey to the End of the Night. That's going to be Saturday, September 20th. That's going to be a lot of fun, where that's going to be a yearly event now, where we play a giant game of tag, run across the whole city. And then October 12th, 2025 is the Storyluck show. October 13th, I am featuring at a show. It's somewhere in Ravenswood. And what else is going on? Hopefully we're going to be producing a one-off show for this guy, Sean Wellington, who's going to be featuring on October 12th. I'm really excited. Yeah, those are our big things that are coming up. And then next year, we have been lining up sponsors. I'm very excited about how next year is going to run. So yeah, we will keep you in the loop. You can go to storyluck.org and it'll pop up and you can join our email list. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. I'm going to hit the end stream button. Bye.